Hey y'all, my name is Ann Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. Hey y'all, welcome to Workforce 4.0. We are so excited to have Kim Losey on our show today. Kim, you work with Rapid Robotics and you are the Chief Marketing Officer there at that company. And I'm super excited to have you on today because we have a great show formatted for our audience about how Rapid Robotics is helping manufacturers solve labor shortage problems, and also just more about Kim and her transition as a serial entrepreneur throughout her career. But Kim, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself formally.
Thanks, Ann. Great to be here. So my name is Kim Losey. I started at Rapid Robotics a little over a year ago as the Chief Marketing Officer. And then most recently, so assumed responsibility for part of an innovation team and the sales organization. And I'm the Chief Growth Officer, which is great because as I tell everybody really, like, yes, I'm in marketing, but I really am a business designer. I don't know if there really is such a thing, but I think that maybe best characterizes kind of, how I approach things. And I really love nothing more than helping businesses grow. That and running. A little bit of that.
I love that. That's amazing. And I know we're going to get a little bit more into the design aspect here shortly. Before we do, I just want to give our guest co-host, Ryan Treece, an opportunity to introduce himself. Ryan, how are you today?
I am great and I'm excited. Thank you, Ann. Co-founder at Industry 4.0 Club with Ann, and also my day job, business development manager at 𝗟𝗏 IoT platforms. So edge and cloud computing, protocol conversion, all the fun nerdy stuff. You know me. So yeah, nice to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, Ryan is our chief resident nerd. He is amazing. Super stoked to have him on the season. He's been a huge help and it's just fun. It's fun to have an extra person here. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Kim, it is just Workforce 4.0 tradition that we have to start out with the very first question of the episode before we get into the nitty gritty, which is, right, what is your favorite karaoke song or song?
Oh, man. Oh, what a way to start. Let's see. Well, so I guess I would say most parts of my life, I would not say I'm typically a follower, but I'm not a huge karaoke fan. So when it comes to karaoke, if everybody is going up singing a song, I'm easily dragged along, but you probably won't catch me leading any big karaoke initiatives. That being said, I am a diehard Madonna fan. So anything Madonna is relatively fun and easy.
Nice. I love that. What's your favorite Madonna song?
That's a hard one to choose, actually. I don't know. All of them. I don't know that I can choose a favorite, actually. She does such a good job. I think it really comes back to the design side of things, like reinventing herself over and over and over. And there are many musicians, I think, that are really good at that. But I love that. And it's probably a really hard thing to do, to stay relevant for so many decades.
She did a great job with it. I'm a fan of Vogue, but maybe it's just the Vogue.
I was going to ask you, Ryan, what your favorite Madonna song was.
It's got to be Vogue, I think. I don't know why. It's just fun. It's just always been fun. It's so unique and like you hear it and it's like iconic.
Yeah.
Madonna's fun. I like a prayer because I'm just... I don't know. I have to go there for some reason.
Love a little bit of controversy.
A little edgy, I guess, as the kids would say.
See, she's got so many different aspects of her songs too. You can identify with. That's good. That's the hardest question, by the way. That's the hardest question of the whole show. So we got.
Man, I don't know if I've had enough coffee for anything like that.
No, no worries. No worries. Yeah, Madonna is amazing. And I love that you brought up that she has been so successful in reinventing herself. And I mean, that's really the truth. I mean, I remember, she was making music when I was very, very, very young. And then again, she had a great record come out, I think when I was in high school. Gosh, am I aging myself?
You're in good
But
company if that helps.
excellent. But I think that, that's really interesting what you picked up with that constant reinvention. I think the manufacturing industry is really going through kind of this transition too, in a way. It seems like we're kind of reinventing ourselves, adding some innovation to maybe some processes that have been in existence for decades. And Rapid Robotics is really doing a great job in assisting with that transition. And, I have to wonder, as a serial entrepreneur and with your amazing background, by the way, you've got a lot of industry experience. And I mean, not just in manufacturing, you've got a lot of experience in other industries as well. What is it about the team at Rapid that inspires you the most?
Yeah, that question. Prior to coming to Rapid, had spent several years at a desk in this, had this amazing role. I was responsible for marketing for all of our mergers and acquisitions and high growth businesses. So it was a really cool experience. I wasn't really looking to leave, but I had a phone call from some recruiters that I had worked with in the past, and I really admire them. And they said, "Hey, we have this opportunity. We think you really need to talk to them." And I was like, I don't know. I've got this really cool, doing all this stuff that I love. I don't know. And then I met Jordan Kretschmer, our CEO, and then I met Radek Lawrence, our co-founder and CTO, and I just fell in love with like their energy and also what the company was trying to do, because I do have this big, this passion for building businesses and seeing manufacturing thrive. And I felt like software is cool. There's certainly a good value, good way to contribute to growth and opportunity there, but being more hands-on, more back to the factory floor, and how do we drive throughput there? How do we help everybody from really like the line managers, the frontline workers, all the way to, or what we used to call like the shop floor to the top floor.
Yep.
Everybody
Yep.
in between everybody benefits, right? When workers are more happy, when their throughput is more predictable, when costs are going down. And so I was like, I want to be part of that. And then it was one of the first meetings where we all came together and we talked about some of the values at Rapid. And one of the number one values is really mutual respect. And as a woman in manufacturing, to me, that really is important. And also as a, I think about myself really as a business designer. I am in many ways a marketer. Marketers don't always have the most respect from the engineering side of things, and I have worked really hard to prove that I have some, technical chops to be able to sort of hang with the engineering team and value what they do. But I think it was that, it really was that mutual respect that I hadn't been able to put my finger on, but I felt it from the minute, that I met the team.
That's
That's
great.
amazing. Ryan, do you kind of run into that? Well, I mean, so in recruiting, there's a lot of great recruiters out there, but sometimes we get a bad name. I don't know why.
Mhm.
But Ryan, do you kind of run into where that situation as well, where you're having to build respect with your engineering team?
I do recognize that I'm a white male, so I do have, for some, I don't get it as much as others. I understand that. But especially early in my career, when they found out I had a business degree, they're just like, business major, right? And I'm like, doesn't matter. Here's all these problems. And I can tell you like A, B, C, D. And then they'd be like, how old are you? I'm 25 at the time. They're like, I have a son older than you. Cool. Does he know anything about machine vision? No. Okay, cool. So anyways, like I was saying, right? But like there is this pushback in the factory. I think there's just so many moving parts. There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of pressure, right? And everyone is terrified of stopping production or stopping the line, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like they have all of this and they know the stress that they have and they know the problems, but the management is aware of these problems too. So it's kind of this acceptable issue. And then you start probing and digging into that, and some people aren't as receptive, right? And I think that's where the marketing comes in, because I've had to leverage marketing and make it very clear and visual. Here's where we're at in the process. Here's the value. Here's the problems that we're solving. And you do it in such a creative, high level way for verticals. And something that stuck out when I looked at your use cases on your website, it's very clear the value, right? And you can see this diagram. You can see where the robots are. You can see what tasks they're doing. You have the ROI on there. It's so straightforward. When I saw it, I was like, why aren't more people doing this, right? And I guess maybe that's what I'm curious about. How are you working with more of the small to medium-sized manufacturers who can't have a dedicated headcount? Or are you also seeing it in very large enterprises as well? I guess, what do you see?
Yeah, we started the company in 2019, or the company was started. I wasn't there at the time, but it started in 2019, right before the pandemic. And we really started with that small and medium-sized manufacturer in mind, because they were really the ones that were struggling with those, the high capital expenditures, the lack of flexibility, the resources that they really didn't have to support automation and robotics. What we found over time is we built a lot of success there, but we also found that, surprisingly, the larger the company, the larger the problem. Like many of these companies that have been using robotics for decades now, in the automotive industry, they have these huge initiatives as well to say, look, we want to automate or whatever, we want to deploy X amount of robots this year. When we look back at what we actually did, it was about 15% of what we aimed to do, because we're spending all this time doing other big, tricky things. So it opened up our eyes really to look at, okay, wait, this is a way bigger problem, than we ever really imagined. And how do we get everybody really rallying behind changing this industry? And of course, we want Rapid to win, but I really want the manufacturers to win. I want to see American manufacturing start to thrive. And I think if we don't figure out how to, I don't know the secret formula necessarily, but I do think the easier it is for people to adopt automation, to adopt robotics, the easier it's going to be for us to see businesses grow and to retain the human workers that we have, because they love working with robots. It's been my experience anyway.
I think so, but I'm biased, I think, sometimes. But I mean, you hear these same stories over and over about how humans are really enjoying working with the robots. But I mean, even with my 6-year-old, you just put a robot in front of him, and I mean, he's like, oh, that's really cool. I mean, there's just something about the tech that they're just drawn to, and that I think we're drawn to. And if it helps give you meaningful work in your workforce, more meaningful work, I think that can really elevate your talent acquisition and your retention strategy, and certainly your culture. But what's one of your favorite use cases for Rapid Robotics and how we're helping to give people more meaningful work, I guess, as we like to say on Workforce 4.0?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite deployments, we actually had 3 industrial robots that were all set up together doing a plasma treatment of a medical syringe. And it was the coolest deployment because the plasma machine looked like a fire-breathing box. And the robot would pick up the syringes and put them in front of the plasma treatment, and it would like shoot fire. And then you're like, oh my God, it's like when I was a little kid. So that sort of stuff is really exciting. But where we've taken this initiative, in the beginning, we were really looking at everything. Like everything needs to be automated, really, especially these highly repetitive, what they call the dull, dirty, dangerous sort of tasks.
Yep.
What we realized is it's as much as we want to standardize everything, nothing is standard. Even if you've got 50 injection mold machines in your shop and they're all the same brand, there's still the inputs, the outputs, everything is different. So it becomes a really custom work that's hard. It's hard and time consuming, and it becomes a challenge. And we can't necessarily work as fast as we want to be able to work. But then what we realized is at the end of the line, where everybody is putting stuff, building boxes, filling boxes, and stacking boxes, that is an area where things are a little more standardized, but also where there is a lot of injury. There's a lot of problem stacking those boxes. And so that's really an area that we've started looking at more intensely. And it is one that I love. You know, you walk into these factories and you see people standing there just building boxes. Sometimes they're boxes that are, 2 feet, well, 1.5 feet, I don't know, over their heads. And you're like, oh my God, that really I don't think that should really be working that way. So seeing robots being able to do that is pretty cool. It's kind of like, building towers when you're a kid and then it all of a sudden falls over.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to avoid.
I was picturing that in my head. I was like, I'm reaching up. That doesn't sound like a fun thing to do all day. That is interesting, though. I agree. I think that's part of the issue. Like you said, you could have the same manufacturing injection molding machine in the same facility running off all of the same utilities and things like that. But the tooling and the part dimension and the error proofing and the different, I like the term short shot, right? So short shot, very, very big buzzword in the plastics industry, and you fill the mold. And then one little corner of the mold sometimes doesn't get that full shot, we'll call for so you have, but it's different for each tooling cavity, right? And so you have different sensors, you have different part dimensions, and standardizing on that. They're different sizes, so it's tough out there. But I like the end of line. You're right. I mean, they have to standardize their packaging in some way. So that's a great use case to get rid of that, like you mentioned, dull, dirty, dangerous jobs where maybe they're lifting heavy stuff or. Yeah.
And the twisting is also really you just see them pulling stuff, it comes down a conveyor. They take it from the conveyor, they turn, they put it on, bending down on a pallet or bend, it's awful. And in a lot of these cases, especially at different parts of the country at different times, there's not great conditions necessarily. And you're not in a perfect 68-degree warehouse ever.
Right.
It's hot, it's dirty. Right. There's oil in the air somehow. There's just a constant mist of oil humidity. I don't know how, but I am curious about your sales process, right? So you mentioned shop floor to top floor, and when I'm walking the facility, I think, how important is it to talk to those operators, find out the challenges of their work task, and then how do you, I guess, when you walk into a factory, what are you looking for? What are you looking at?
Yeah, well, let me start with the first part of that question, talking to the people on the floor. It might have been Automate or MD&M, one of the trade shows that I've been at. And I met this man who's been in the industry for a really long time. He said he spent the last 35 years, I think, as a consultant. And he's like, I have a couple of philosophies, one being there is no fault. And he said, and then the people who run those machines have more knowledge than you would ever imagine.
That's
and
true.
So I loved that. And he's like, there's no manual that's going to tell you if you do this, turn this thing a little too hard, it's not going to work. But the person who's there, or the 3 people, if it's 3 shifts, they're the people who are going to know. So I think it's really important to talk to them and understand where they're coming from and what they know. But then it's also really important to talk to the executive team and to really understand what are they trying to accomplish. I'm not sure exactly how my colleagues feel about it, but I do often go into meetings saying, look, I'm not trying to sell you a robot. I mean, if you need a robot, we'll get you a robot. I want to understand, what business problem are you really trying to solve? And I want to help you try to solve it in the most cost-effective, reliable, time-efficient sort of way. Maybe not the best for high robot volume, but I think that, the customers appreciate it. And I do think that's what it really comes down to. A lot of times there are robots, certainly, that can solve that problem, and that's the answer. But I think if you don't understand at the top what business outcome, what does success look like, and then also at the bottom, what does success look like, and really everywhere in between. I mean, I often will say to a champion who would bring us into a business, have you talked to human resources? Have you talked to IT? Like, you need to talk to them early, because human resources might be like they might be a huge champion for this because they're spending $30,000 a year with recruiters trying to, bring people in, or retention bonuses, or all of these other things. You might find unexpected advocates, for what you're really trying to do. And then they can tend to be a bit of an afterthought sometimes, which is not fair to them, and often can get in the way too. You get to the end of it and they're like, yeah, you're not connecting to our network in that way.
The department of
Yeah,
no.
you have to make sure it all integrates too, right? And it's all going to talk to each other. That's a huge, I will tell you from a human resource perspective, workman's comp claims is a big part of human resources. That falls exclusively under their priorities, as well as health insurance for employees, all of that stuff, right? And that's going to advocate them to say, or I guess motivate them to say, yeah, I mean, this is a great idea, but they're probably going to keep the people and what their concerns are at the center of tech implementation.
One of the things that I've found that's really cool with some of our customers is they'll actually name the robots.
Yes. And then I would totally name a robot.
I love that.
I know. And then I love when they bring the other employees together, and then it feels like we own this together. Our department, this is our robot. Her name is Nancy, or whatever. Or let's vote. Like those 3 robots that are the plasma treatment robots I was telling you about. The team was thinking like, maybe we call them Larry, Curly, and Moe, or maybe we call them like, I don't know. So then people feel like a vested interest in the success of these robots, and they become part of the team.
I named Courtney Fernandez. She has an ER robot, and I named it Rudy. Yes, his name is Rudy. Yes. and then another person from UR got me the mini robot.
Oh yeah.
Sculpture. And so now that's Rudy Jr.
Nice.
I mean, and my 6-year-old knows Rudy Jr. and we can look at it, move him around a little bit, but just try to be extra careful with Rudy Jr. But
that's so funny. But it's always more fun when you can make it, like you said, like this fun, like everyone owns this. We all are kind of in on this little inside joke, but it's difficult to get buy-in at some of these factories sometimes from the operators. They're saying, oh, I'm fearful for my job, right? So when you see someone go, oh, let's make this fun, right? Let's all jump in. That's always a big moment for me. You can feel that kind of switch. Like, you're not here to replace my job. You're here to make my job easier. And I like the way that you frame that at the beginning, right? I work for a robotics company. I'm not trying to sell you a robot. I'm trying to understand where your problems are, and maybe it works out for both of us, right? And I think so you take that off the table immediately, and then hope that they can give you those kind of issues, and then you're constantly probably trying to tie, like, did I do that before for another customer in a similar application? And what are you calling this internally? You have all these, like, I felt like the first few years of my career, I was just writing down, like, short shot means this, right? All these terms that, like, I'm in a meeting and it, like, my eyes go, what?
All the acronyms.
And it's different. It's different for each industry. I mean, so like even the industry sector, manufacturing, and then there's like different niches like of manufacturing, right? And it's all different terminology is what I've found. Personally.
Yeah. And then you get into global business and you're completely lost. Like, I don't know what that word is in Japanese.
It gets really confusing really quickly. And then all of their machines have different controllers. And then you look at a machine in Japan and there's 4,500 sensors on one small cell. And then you go to the US and the same part has like 3 proc sensors on it. And it's just like everything gets really tough really quick there.
Yeah, I do think the good part about it is that when you start thinking about business outcomes, that's pretty universal and easy to understand. Time is money. We've got to protect our people. We've got to protect our profit. We've got to get this product out the door. So, that makes it a little bit easier.
But I do kind of want to shift gears in the conversation because I think there's a lot of value in some of your experience and your background in business development, strategy, and design as you would say, because I feel like in manufacturing sometimes the mentality is still a little siloed into different departments, right? So what are some things that could maybe, or some approaches that could maybe like be applied from a design thinking aspect to, we'll just say like the career trajectory of someone or creating roles?
Yeah, right. I guess I tend to always advise the people I work with or the people on my team to think about like everybody, like that, those frontline workers that determine but can see problems in the day-to-day work that other people may not see. And I think I always try to approach it and encourage other people to approach it in terms of like, how can you be part of solving the problem? Don't just complain about the problem. Like that doesn't do any good. Let's be part of solving it. I find it very easy to tell a story and to put something together. Just let me know. I can help you write that story or document that idea and how you might make it better. And I think some of the best ideas kind of come from that. I think it's one of the things maybe that marketing doesn't get a lot of credit for is the amount, especially today, of optimization. And actually it's a combination of art and science that really goes into it. I think a lot of that could be applied to an operations sort of situation or anything really. Like, let's just keep building on what we're doing and pulling different levers. And some of them are going to work and some of them are not going to work, but let's measure it. And if it's not working, change it quickly. And if it is working, dial it up. And let's just kind of keep going and see how we can hack our way to success.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in design, you often think about sort of like a double diamond. Like you start with an idea, you expand your thinking, and then you start to narrow it down. And then sometimes it needs a little bit more. Let's go big again, and then let's narrow it down. So I think if you even time box things like that, it's really interesting way to think about, okay, we have a problem. We need to optimize this. All the ideas are on the table. Come, like, who has ideas that can make this thing better? Let's think about it all. And then let's think about what is the effort and the impact. So as a creative thinker, I often have to put a framework around things or I'll go crazy. Like, so I think about like
resonate with that.
Yeah. It just, your mind's like, how did I get there?
Yeah. So effort and impact, how hard is this going to be versus how much impact is it going to have? And then we figure like, okay, let's start there and let's keep making it better. And then let's refine our process and then let's go big again. Okay, we've moved 2 steps forward. Now, what else can we do? How can we go even bigger? I think another process, I spent a lot of years in the toy industry, which is very aligned with the entertainment industry. And I once worked with a PR firm that we did an exercise that I really loved. And they said, you know, we all were together in a room and they said, tell me what would the headline be of whether it's the Wall Street Journal or the Toy Book or the New York Times. If there was, when we're finished with this project, what is the news headline? And so all kinds of crazy ideas were coming, you know, out. And then we landed on a couple of things that sounded really exciting. And then you sort of go, okay, let's work backwards. How are we going to get there? Like, and it's more of yes and rather than no but, you know. So you want to keep encouraging people to say like, okay, yes, and what if we did this or what if we did that? Then when you get certainly the different departments, it becomes really cool. And everybody has this really unique perspective and it all kind of comes together. And a lot of times, you know, more difficult or challenging ideas can fall to the wayside, which is okay. And often, you know, 1 or 2 things are sort of like, okay, that could actually work. It's a little bit of a crazy idea, but, you know, if we work together, we can make it happen. So I don't know if that really answers your.
It's improv. It's business improv. It's business improv. I love it. But that's so important to get people comfortable enough at that point, right? And I love your, what's the headline? What do we want as a result? Where's the end game? Reverse engineer that. And I think having that, yes and mentality, or if someone says something interesting, okay, and how would that work, right?
Yeah.
Like if I don't see it, I say, okay, I'm sorry. I'm new here. I'm not an engineer. I'm a business major. Can you please walk me through how you got from here to hear, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the end result. But it's always good when you have that kind of creative kind of energy and people are just throwing out as many ideas as possible.
Some visitors.
Say hi.
Hi.
We like visitors. I got a sleepy visitor back here.
I think your answers from that last question really brought a lot of that to the forefront. For sure.
I think one of the things that always amazes me is the first Lego League and other young robotics companies or robotics groups like that. I mean, when I think about actually what it takes to program a real robot, a full-size industrial robot, or some of our UR cobots, and then I think about the skills that those kids have that are doing these Lego challenges, like that is an amazing
crazy.
Future workforce.
Yes.
Like they're really thinking about like, I need to make this thing do this, and then it's gonna, it's like the whole sequence of planning out what the motion path is, what does it need to accomplish. It's great skill building, and there is a huge demand for robotics and automation people, and it's just going to keep getting bigger, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it is teaching them that concept of design thinking and critical thinking skills. You brought up your experience working for a toy manufacturer.
I worked for Hasbro for almost 14 years in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And I tell people that's actually where I learned the most about manufacturing that I ever thought I would learn. I mean, I was responsible really for the entire P&L of a lot of different business units over the years. And Transformers was maybe one of the most complicated, most expensive toys to tool. And so, and huge demands, especially as we were building the movies, and you're thinking like, oh, I need all these different cavities in the mold so I can get to the, demand that I'm going to need and the time that I'm going to need it. So I'm not hitting all these fees from retailers because I'm not going to hit the shelves in time. So it was also a fantastic experience.
That's amazing. Yeah, because you were in a similar role probably to some of your potential clients, right? So you can say, okay, when I was in that situation, these were, when I was building out my solution, this is what caused me extra headaches. This is what, so you can look at something like, that's probably tough to assemble, or that has a lot of parts, right? And how are you going from injection molding the parts to assembling them and knowing where those drivers are? That's great experience.
Yeah. And that pressure of not being able to understand the time pressure and sensitivity of being able to drive that growth and that business volume. And then as a business owner feeling like, the well-being of my community and my employees is in my, like, I'm responsible for that. My God, I can't fail at this. So I've got to figure out something.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, we are big fans of Transformers in this house. And I had Transformers growing up. Brian, I bet you had some Transformers.
You know it. I mean, I can't hide it. Like, I love them. Did you ever see the video of the Halloween costume with the kids with the Transformer
outfits? Oh my God, that's awesome. Yes.
One of my favorites. I was like, do they make those in adult sizes? Because I want to just go on the sidewalk and turn into a Transformer.
Yes.
Like, that was so creative for me.
Yeah.
That is I agree. I think we should get some adult sizes in this as well. I mean, asking for a friend, obviously.
Obviously.
Right? But what drives you, what motivates you to want to be a business owner and to have that influence on your business and on the industry?
I just love the creative challenge of it. It's really about impact, and it is a bit addicting. I work when I have to work. I love what I do, so I don't mind doing it at all. But then there's times where, at 3:00 on a Thursday, I want to go for a run or do something else, and I just go and I do it. So I'm very fortunate to have that sort of flexibility. What I love about being an entrepreneur and in the roles that I've been in is I want to just do it. I want to see it work. I want to try. I failed, and there's been a number of things that have failed. There've been a number of things that have succeeded. What drives me crazy is having to spend hours and hours and hours convincing somebody that something's a good idea rather than just doing it. And so I believe a lot in surrounding myself with people who are also smart and inspire me, and trusting them to do the things that they do, and also telling them, like, look, if you're not messing some stuff up, you're probably not working the way you need to be working. Like, it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes.
It's okay, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's, like, it happens all the time. I make mistakes all the time.
Which is the complete opposite of a manufacturing environment, right? They're like, don't break anything.
Yeah.
Don't break anything. Don't touch. Who touched it last? Who touched this robot last, right?
I know, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But it's
pretty different.
But so important when you're building the solutions, right? Because
yeah.
I think that,
I always ask myself, what's the worst that can happen? And is it that bad? Then if it's that bad, maybe it's a little too crazy. If it's not that bad, okay, we'll figure it out.
I mean, it's almost stability in your career and your work. I use this example all the time because, I mean, it's probably the most relatable, but with a small child, it would be really infeasible for me to work on a floor just with his schedule, and running him around and picking him up and, oh no, he's sick. And I think that a solution like Rapid Robotics is brilliant because I think it really does have the potential to offer people more flexible work as well. And I kind of, what are your thoughts on that, Kim? Do you think that's possible?
So. I think so. I mean, I think there've been some really interesting articles too that I've read about, so many. I mean, we know that there are not as many women in the manufacturing workforce as other industries, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. It's a long path, I think, maybe to get there, but I think one of the things is for companies to be able to offer more flexibility and things that women who are typically tend to be primary caregivers in most cases need more flexibility than, like, you have to be here for these 8 hours and this shift. So I love some of those conversations that are really happening. I do also think that the work of the future with robots is different kind of work. I think it's not necessarily harder. I think it requires different skills, but I think it does free up humans to be able to do things differently, which may then provide more flexibility for sort of, well, I still need to oversee those robots. There already, of course, is remote monitoring, but remote monitoring is even more feasible. And, how remote, I think, remains to be seen. There's some interesting things there that I think could really happen, that could open up a lot of doors for people to be able to work in different ways, and then make it easier to have more diversity, across the workforce.
I like the remote aspect. I'm seeing a lot more of people offering services, like we call it connected machine, robots as a service, things like that. I mean, when I was selling production equipment, I would get an angry phone call from a customer, right? And they'd say, hey, production's down. I call my service manager. He flies someone out almost immediately, right? The last minute hotel bookings. You show up on the floor maybe less than 24 hours later, and you can feel like, okay, this is broken. You probably have a plant manager over your shoulder. Now, the customer experience, instead of, hey, this is broken, we ran it to failure, even if your solution isn't part of the problem, they're saying, okay, everything's stopped because of you. And now you can say, hey, I have this remote analytics feature. I have this process, and I know these different metrics, and you can reach out to the customer proactively, right? So you're telling them about problems that they don't even know about. Hey, we're starting to see these numbers drift a little bit. If you could schedule service on third shift, or you might want to keep an eye out on this. Completely different customer experience, right?
Totally.
But I think that remote service workforce, if you maybe cross-trained all of these people who, hey, I got to work from home today, right? And so now they can still participate and take over some of those roles. I think that's a great solution.
I think so. And then I think the remote access also, like the proactive diagnostics, are really important. I also think we've seen situations where someone will call and they'll say, my robot's down. We can go back and look at the data log and say, actually, we think we know what happened, so that when we do show up on the shop floor, although I would say 98% of the time we can resolve something remotely. The other times where you do have to show up, you want to show up with the right tools and the right parts to fix it, because you already know what's wrong with it. You don't want to wait for somebody to show up and then they have to diagnose it on your floor, and then they have to order the parts, and like then you've got a nightmare on your hands.
Oh yeah.
So
the complexity of some of these machines too that you're servicing, that's right there. Informed, we call it like an informed visit, right? You have initial data, you look at you go to your tool room and you're like, okay, pulling stuff off the wall, grab maybe a few spare parts. Yeah, completely different experience. Once again, showing up, panicking, oh, I don't have this right tool, or oh, we have these sitting in the shop, I wish I grabbed one. Now that informed visit, you're prepared, and you can walk in the factory and say, hey, we looked at the data. These are our initial thoughts, not like, I just got here, I don't know what's going on.
Right.
That's awesome.
Proactive data.
That's
like,
good.
yes.
That's great.
Yes, absolutely.
I when I was in college, I had a summer job, I think after my freshman or sophomore year. I was fortunate enough to work at the company where my dad worked. It was a pulp and paper company. And it was cool. Yeah. And what wasn't cool is I had to wear a hard hat and I had to wear steel-toed boots to work. It kind of was terrible, but that part of it was terrible. But compared to many other student workers who were cutting the lawn in South Carolina, 105-degree weather, I was at least inside, but I worked in the stock room. Where we had all of the spare parts for the machines, of like huge paper machines. And the workers would come to the window and they'd be like, machine number 2 is down. I need whatever, a 2-inch coupling and a this and a that. They'd write out their list of what they wanted. And the first week I was like, oh my God, I don't even know what that is. Like, what is that? And my dad was the controller. And so I often would hear about, for every minute that this paper machine is down, here's how much money we're losing. And I was like, oh my God, I got it. Like, what is a coupling? I have to figure this out.
You're under
running down the aisles, like trying to figure it out. Like, not only is this employee who's trying to fix it going to be mad at me if I don't figure it out, my dad's going to be so mad.
And they're so obscure. You'll never run into these in your daily life, right? And you hear these extremely technical terms, and you probably have these big shelves everywhere with parts that are this big, parts that are this big, and you're like, I don't even know where.
There's numbers.
I'm walking.
There's not even numbers, right? There's no words. There's just numbers.
And this was, I don't know, 1995 probably. Like, there wasn't a whole lot. Nothing was really. There weren't these fancy retrieval systems and all that sort of stuff. It was sort of tribal knowledge, like, those things are back in aisle 4, 3/4 of the way down the aisle.
yeah, exactly. Like, someone just like had their own system. It's like you go to someone's kitchen in their house and you're like, I don't understand where anything is right now, but they know this weird. But now it is a little bit easier. They have traceability with part numbers, but that's a great way to learn and to know at such a young age the importance of uptime, productivity, the cost of that, and the complexity of these machines and the parts. That's amazing experience.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, Kim, I want to be conscious of your time as well. So I think I've got time for one more question. Do you have time for one more question?
I do, yeah.
Awesome, perfect. So I guess my last question for this episode is, again, kind of building on this amazing career that you've personally had, but what do you look for in a new hire? Like, what are some of the things that, if somebody's out there listening and they're, really interested either in coming to work for Rapid Robotics, to help them better prepare for an interview into the automation and robotics space? Like, what are some things that you look for in a new hire?
So for me personally, collaboration is really important. And I think it really is broad thinking and different perspectives coming together that make ideas bigger than you think they really can be. So I'm always looking for people who are amazing people, whether they're introverts or extroverts, doesn't matter, but that have the ability to see the best in other people's ideas and make them better, or to understand them and think through, how do we work together? So that is super important for me. I think for the industry, what is important? I think the problem solving is really important. And I tell everybody the fundamentals of marketing, and I would say sales too, is really understanding your customer. People can be mediocre at a lot of different jobs. The way to be better than mediocre is to really understand the people that you're serving, the customer that you're serving, and it helps you with, you know, every decision. What is my product doing? What is my service doing? What is my copy doing? You know, and I'm guilty of this too. I often will look at things that we write the first time.
Right.
I need substance.
3 bullet points.
There's a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of language. We talked circles for a page. I got nothing out of this, right?
Yeah.
Kim, what's your, I gotta know, like, what are your thoughts on job descriptions that are like 2 pages long?
Oh yeah.
Think that's overkill or?
Yeah, I think nobody's gonna read. I love looking at watching other marketers and other communicators, and the ones I admire the most are the ones that really cut to the chase. Like, give me real words, tell me how it's gonna help me. And that's what I want to know, you know. And I've been spending the past couple of weeks reading a bunch of white papers on different topics, really trying to understand more about material handling and trucking. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a 48-page document. I mean, you could, I really just need, you know, the maybe 8 pages, but I could probably get this in 8 paragraphs.
Yeah. ChatGPT,
Just tell me what I need to know.
Please summarize this 48-page paper, ChatGPT. Thank you.
Exactly. Well, I think it comes back to, again, understanding who is your audience. I mean, certainly in some cases, if you're talking to, you know, researchers and engineers, they do need all of the background and detail about a new technology, and they want to, you know, confidence that the research was done in the right way and all of those sorts of things. But if your audience is a plant manager, for example, like, that person is worried about the productivity of that plant. And it's not that they don't want to read what you're writing, but if you can give it to them in 2 paragraphs or 2 sections of 3 bullet points, that's even better.
Yeah. How many marketing emails that are really long have you read, especially from someone you barely know or don't know? No, sensitive subject of the inbox. That's good though. That collaboration mindset is so important in this industry.
And then really understanding the customer, and, you know, also being adaptable, right? I know that for me, I try to be sensitive to this because I've always been, you know, from a design background, I'm very comfortable with ambiguity and lack of direction. Like, things are changing, it's disruptive, it's uncertain, it's a little scary, but it's going to be okay. Like, we just need to think about how do we fix it? How do we turn this thing into an opportunity? And I think that generally positive approach and that optimistic outlook can be really valuable, because things are changing faster than they ever have. And I don't think it's going to slow down.
No,
I don't think so either. Well, Kim, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Ryan, before we close out, do you have any other questions or comments for Kim?
Kim, you're awesome, and you're always awesome. Such a fun, great time. Thank you for hosting. And
thank you. Thank you both for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Kim, for those that are listening today and they want to learn more, they want to reach out to you and they want to learn more about either Rapid Robotics or just you as an amazing person yourself, what is the best way for them to reach out to you or to contact you?
Don't send me a long email on
that. That's right. Number 1.
LinkedIn is actually the best way to reach me. I do go through on the weekends usually, and will accept connection requests. And it is my goal. I sort of put my LinkedIn profile in creator mode with the intent of actually writing more content, sharing more brief but poignant content, I hope.
Awesome. Well, Kim, it has been an absolute pleasure having you today. I really appreciate the conversation. This was so deep and so awesome. Ryan, I appreciate you being here as always. And for anybody out there listening, everybody listening today, thank you so much. You can contact Kim on LinkedIn or go to the Rapids Robotic website at rapidsrobotics.com, I believe.
Yeah, rapidrobotics.com. Yep.
Rapidrobotics.com to learn more. And otherwise, we will see you guys on the next episode of Workforce 4.0.